On August 19th, 2024, after 602 days, I finished the second version of the Epic Mickey 2 task for the Wii in 1 hour, 3 minutes, and 57.033 seconds. This beats the previous version of the task by 6 minutes and 11.067 seconds. But how was it done? TAS stands for Tool Assisted Speedrun, and is where a player uses an emulator, slowdown, save states, and frame advance to replay sections of the game until they are optimal. In the case of this task, I used Dolphin Emulator version 5.0-18102 and manually changed the inputs frame by frame until I was satisfied with a certain section. I then replayed the recording and put the audio and frame recordings into an editor. This was to prevent desyncs, when the input desyncs with what is being replayed.
Not long ago, a rather brave but
The curious intruder once again entered my workshop with one goal in mind: to find and retrieve my magic brush.
Before the run starts, I skip the opening screens and choose an empty save file. Dolphin begins every emulation from the disk selection, meaning the opening screens show up. On other versions of the game, such as the version on Steam, the save file select screen doesn't exist, meaning you only have one save file. This is one of the many differences between versions that exist. The game's opening cutscene quickly refreshes you with the plot of the previous game before we are thrown into a cinematic where an earthquake strikes Mean Street and the Mad Doctor sings the best song known to man. Epic Mickey 2 has both skippable and unskippable cutscenes. Fortunately, the opening cinematic is skippable. You can skip one of these cutscenes by holding down the A button while the cutscene is playing. However, you can start holding down the button a bit before the cutscene visually starts. After that, Mickey jumps into a TV, calling him. After another cutscene, he jumps some more before running on the ground and jumping up to spin the glass container covering the magic hat. Jumping is not the fastest way to move, and it actually loses 2 frames per jump. So every time you see Mickey jump on seemingly flat ground, there is a very good reason for it. In this case, Mickey walks very slowly on the ground in the first room and half of the second, so the jumps are planned carefully to avoid jumping too far when needed. In the second room, the corner is cut very close, so Mickey lands just after the slow portion of the room. It may not look like Mickey cuts the corner close at all, but often the visuals of the walls do not accurately reflect their hitboxes. Here, Mickey spins very low in his jump to get pushed slightly by the corner of the table and collect the hat sooner. This works because the corner is directly in the path of Mickey's trajectory, so the game forces me forward out of the corner.
Suddenly, the cosmos spread before him, a plane of imagination fueled by brush, paint, and thinner.
By pressing C on the nunchuck, the camera quickly snaps to behind Mickey. The camera is adjusted using this technique after climbing these stairs to turn it quicker, making the angles to the mirror easier to create. Mickey jumps late over this gap. This is called a coyote jump. These jumps abuse coyote frames, when the character can jump shortly after falling off a ledge. In the case of Epic Mickey 2, Mickey gains a small boost by jumping off a slope. Almost every edge in Epic Mickey 2 is not at a right angle, meaning a small amount of height gained from jumping normally is translated into horizontal speed gain. Mickey also jumps off a lantern to avoid ledge grabbing the platform with the mirror. This jump is made a lot easier on the other game versions, but on the Wii version, the top of the lantern is a conical shape. To jump on the lantern, Mickey must be near the exact center of the lantern, otherwise he will slide off.
With the brush in hand, Mickey saw that the very stars were waiting to come alive. They needed only paint to dance once more. Finding himself at home, Mickey should have felt safe.
This room is very dependent on cycles. After grabbing the brush, you are stuck until you paint one of the platforms. Strangely enough, you can paint or thin two pieces of tune simultaneously if you aim accurately enough. By aiming directly in the middle of the two platforms, both are painted in one stream. I then do another coyote jump and paint the rest of the platforms by aiming between two and then quickly switching the cursor to the last one. By doing these tricks, Mickey is now too fast for the cycle, so I do another lamp jump to make it up to the next set of platforms. Mickey cannot jump after landing directly after a paint burst, so I wait a few frames before jumping. I avoid these scenarios when possible. Mickey has a cooldown for when he can do a paint burst, and afterward, he has to wait before jumping again. During the next paint stream, I aim between two platforms to paint two at once, and then run against the edge before jumping and just barely making the jump across the void. This is called air stalling. Air stalling can be done by spinning and paint or thinner bursting in a rhythm to extend the jump. The most optimal method of air stalling is this. Jump, and then at the peak of the jump spin, then right as you begin to fall after the spin, paint or thinner burst. Then jump as soon as possible and repeat. I didn't spin here though because the platform I'm landing on is slightly higher than the one I jumped from. After another paint burst, I land on the rising platform and adjust my position. Unfortunately, I have to wait for the cycle here as the lantern is too far away for it to save any time. In the third level, I made constant use of coyote jumps. I am just high enough after the peak of my jump to barely paint the first platform and then land on its very edge. I then spin jump by spinning as I'm still in the jump animation to gain some extra distance as the cooldown for the paint burst is not over yet. After the cooldown ends, I paint burst a platform and use a paint stream on the last platform right before I land on it. To enter the mirror, I must not have any input on the control stick for 1 frame before I press A, otherwise I'll jump.
Finding himself at home, Mickey should have felt safe. Looking at the brush, he wondered if thinner could help him find the truth behind his unease. The choice was his.
At the start, there is also another difference between PC and Wii speedruns. In the PC run, a small portion of the ceiling is thinned, allowing a small bit of the painted tune to jut out from which you can jump and clear the wall. In the Wii version, this bit of collision does not exist, so Mickey thins the wall and the base of the telescope. This next jump is deceptively precise, as the distance must be maximized while maintaining height. The optimal pattern of air stalling is used, but every input is done slightly earlier so Mickey lands on the edge. Before Mickey performs the jump, he jumps to land on the bridge's platform's edge, because in this situation, running is slightly slower than jumping. This is due to two factors. 1. The bridge's uneven collision, and 2. Mickey's increased negative vertical speed when falling from the jump. Part of that speed is then converted to horizontal speed from the coyote jump, and then Mickey conserves his height in the air by emitting the first spin. The final paint burst increases Mickey's height ever so slightly so that he lands on the platform right next to the brush. It is intended for Mickey to thin the bottoms of these spheres so that he can land on them, but it is actually very possible to jump on their tops. Mickey does a short series of coyote jumps before pausing for seemingly no reason and then disappearing halfway in the cutscene. What just happened? Well, remember when I said that Mickey waits for 3 frames after walking off a ledge before jumping to get a coyote jump? This happens because the game delays inputs for 3 frames before they're performed. Because Mickey was on the ground when the input was being pressed, he still jumped even though he was in the air. This is true for all inputs. Every input you see Mickey do is pressed 3 frames before it is done, including pausing. Pausing, however, has an extra frame of lag before the 3-frame delay, totaling to 4 frames of delay. The logic of Mickey jumping in the air still accounts for pausing too. If the pause button were pressed exactly 4 frames before a cutscene started, the game would still register the pause even though the cutscene started on that frame, bypassing the normal checks for gameplay during a cutscene. Because these checks were bypassed, Mickey can move, paint, use sketches, and do pretty much everything he can normally during cutscenes. This is called pause CFR, short for cutscene free roam. In this case, a cutscene that normally introduces the choice of thinning and getting a golden ticket with 100 e-tickets, or painting and getting a pin from a chest is skipped. The golden ticket is chosen for 2 reasons. 1, getting a ticket is way faster than opening a chest and getting a pin, and 2, we need the 100 e-tickets to buy the TV sketch later in the run, but we'll get to why we need that later. This mural is made of 6 toon segments, 3 on the left and 3 on the right. Mickey can once again thin between 2 segments to thin it faster. Once that's done, Mickey vanishes before reappearing from behind the camera. This is due to how the cutscene functions. After the cutscene is over, it teleports Mickey to the center of the platform he landed on. In normal gameplay, this would go unnoticed as it happens off-screen and it doesn't teleport you very far. But here, it's a little bit more noticeable. The reason you couldn't do CFR after getting the hat is that the gate at the end of the stairway is closed until the end of the cutscene.
Oh, hurry, boys!
Oswald, double jump to glide across that gap.
Oh, the castle's falling down! We have to go! Hurry up, you slowpokes!
Hortensia!
Do you think she made it? Come on, we need to go around and look for her.
By Jove, I bet you two can get out of here by using that balcony. Mickey, go over to... Oh my! Well, that... It looks like both gears need to be spun in order to open the door. Look there, Oswald. The machine... If we're ever going to get your remote, we're going to have to get the machine working.
I'll just use my arm to take care of this. Here it is. Now you'll see what I can really do, Mickey.
Look!
What are we waiting for? Don't you want to find Hortensia?
At the very start of Dark Beauty Castle, another pause is used to move during Hortensia's dialogue, saving a few seconds. I then angle Mickey ever so slightly left to land on this platform, and then Coyote jump up to the platform with Hortensia. Having 360-degree movement is such a blessing because I can make tighter turns. On PC, you don't have this luxury. Unfortunately, I am forced to sit through this cutscene because Oswald will not jump up and collapse the balcony otherwise. Hello everyone, I would like you to meet my arch nemesis. Oh, you're just a lucky rabbit. Oswald the lucky rabbit! Yeah, if you want to know why it took me almost 2 years to make this version of the TAS, there are 3 reasons for it. 1, I was not the fastest worker to put it lightly. 2, this bitch. And 3, desyncs. When I got to Rainbow Caverns once, the TAS decided to desync for whatever reason and I was forced to redo the entire thing. This happened twice. So to avoid this issue, I decided to record every individual section of the TAS and then splice them together. Anyway, where were we? Oh yeah, my arch nemesis. Oswald is this very badly programmed AI that can help you out from time to time. And by time to time, I mean almost never. In fact, 90% of the time, Oswald slows you down. Like, when you call him, he just doesn't show up. But right now, Oswald has a really simple task. Get to me so that I can throw him up. I help him a little bit here by moving toward him. I then throw him just as he moves inside the radius to move up to the balcony. I then jump up to the gear on the left. This is because Oswald is dumb. You see, Oswald never actually wants to go to where you want him to. Most of the time, he jumps off, but by heading in the easiest straight line to follow, and even waiting to jump after I land, Oswald's tiny brain can comprehend which direction he's supposed to go in. After he successfully baits an iPad child over to the gear and spins it, Mickey spins a chest to collect the most amount of tickets possible for the TV sketch we need later in the run. The contents of the chest change every frame depending on your inputs. By changing these inputs slightly and spinning on the correct frame, you can manipulate what you get. I do this to manipulate a drop of 33 tickets. Oswald then does the one helpful thing unprompted in this entire task, and picks up some of the tickets I need so I can take a straighter line to the remote. Since Oswald is now in a state where he knows what to do, he now teleports to me when called. This is called Oswald Manip, and it will be used almost constantly throughout the run. I'll explain it in more detail the next time it's done, which will be in Main Street North. Pause CFR is done once again to move during the cutscene to get to the turnstile faster.
Here it is! Now you'll see what I can really do, Mickey. What are we waiting for? Don't you want to find Hortensia?
Be careful. If we're ever going to get out of here, you'll have to use your remote to get these machines working again. Try shocking the switch that's connected to the machine. And let's see if we can get Oswald. You need to hit both electrodes on the machine at the same time. Oh dear! If the machine gets power now, it's sure to overload. Watch out!
This CFR movement at the start here might seem really weird at first, so let's break it down. First, I do a coyote jump off the edge of this platform while holding minus to call Oswald. Now because Oswald is in that state where he comes when called due to the setup I did before, he teleports next to me. Now, unfortunately I have to wait for this ledge to fall before the invisible wall disappears, so to gain some momentum I move backwards slightly. I then jump before the lever to avoid stopping when I go to grab it. Up at the top, suddenly, I have CFR again. Some cutscenes remove CFR and others don't. This cutscene here just so happens to not. It doesn't really help me in any way, and I try to thin the metal beam early, but I don't have enough time before it goes off screen. This next bit is supposed to be a tutorial for Oswald in 2P, but in 1P, it's essentially a cutscene, except for thinning this pipe right here. And then force Oswald to trail behind me by blocking his intended route, because otherwise he'll get in the way of the thinner stream.
This courtyard leads to the train station. Just break the castle.
Spatters in the castle? They're not supposed to be here. Before we advance, we'll have to deal with them. To make them friendly, fire paint at... What is that creature? Is it a blockworks? Oswald, try using your remote's electricity to stun that monstrosity!
Back door is the train station. Let's go.
Look, there you are! Come on, we need to get out of here!
Hortensia, how did you get here?
Well, you're not the only one who has adventures.
Isn't she the best?
Oh, they get worse! Oh, wait, are those fireworks? Oswald, I thought I told you to get rid of them.
I did. I meant to, but I...
Just a minute, you two. If Oswald were to shock those fireworks, they'd ignite. Great. So, if we move them next to those rocks and lit them off, then just maybe... Be careful! That explosion could hurt someone.
Right here we see the first skip of the run, courtyard skip. When you enter this room, a collapse sequence occurs and you're supposed to paint 2 spatters to progress up to the top. Instead, you can jump on this bush and then precisely jump up to the handle of the pipe that the spatters come out of. From there, you can jump up to the top. This jump is supposed to be made with Oswald, but it is actually very possible to make it across on your own. I then spin on a specific frame to manipulate a drop of 10 e-tickets, and then jump on this blockwork so I can paint it. I'd like to jump on its head every time and then do paint burst to paint it, just because it looks cool. Now if you paint it before Gus's text box, you can skip that with a pause. This cutscene looks like it should be able to be skipped with CFR, but you can't grab onto things during cutscenes. These fireworks have a surprisingly large hitbox, so you don't have to move them very far for them to break the rocks. And with the train taking us to Mean Street, we officially finished the prologue. There are 3 chapters to Epic Mickey 2, and with every one you return to Mean Street, so it will become our central hub.
Now entering
Gosh, Gus, I didn't think Mean Street would be this broken.
Well, it's gotten worse since the main quake. Oh. And Jamface will be overseeing repair. Shall we enter the underground?
Whoa, okay. That's a lot of pausing. To understand what is going on, let's first look at what it's supposed to be. So, Mean Street South is supposed to be this area that fans of the first game would look at and reminisce about. Now, Mean Street used to be one area, but in this game, there was an earthquake that separated them, and now the only way to access Mean Street North is through the underground, which you can get to through the sewer. Don't ask me how that makes sense. Now, Mean Street South is just an island now. Anyway, at the start there's a skippable cutscene of the train coming in, followed by a 25-second long cutscene that essentially says that to get over to Mean Street North, you need to take the underground. That's how it's supposed to go. Fortunately, there is 1 frame of delay after you skip the cutscene at the beginning and before the 25-second cutscene starts, meaning you can pause on that frame, giving us CFR. Now let's divide the unskippable cutscene into 2 parts separated by a fade to black. The first part contains 2 text boxes, and the second contains just 1. Text boxes in both Epic Mickey games have a weird property. Pausing while the text box is up immediately ends the dialogue and essentially skips it. So in the first section, the second longer text box can be skipped with a pause, allowing Mickey to progress to the entrance to the underground. This fade right here may seem all nice and innocent, but for whatever reason, it actually splits the cutscene into 2 and gets rid of CFR, which is really annoying. The text box in the second section is really long, so we should skip that too. But to skip it, we need CFR, meaning we need to pause on the fade to get it back. After the text box is skipped, the cutscene ends and we can enter the underground. So to recap, a pause is used to activate CFR after the skippable cutscene. Then we let a short text box play to allow Mickey to run to the underground entrance before skipping the following really long text box. Another pause is used to regain CFR so the last really long text box can be skipped, thus ending the cutscene and allowing us to enter the underground.
Watch out for the drop wing, Mickey. Not only does it spit thinner, but it'll pick you up if you get too close. Look over there. It's a trapped gremlin. Let's head over and see what we can do.
Oh, So anyway, welcome to... We're now. First time's free since you busted me out, but I'll have to charge you next time. Fuel's pretty scarce since the quake. There you go. The balloons are working now if you need them.
Would you like to go to Mean Street North?
The underground starts with a relatively long fade-in, so during this time I hold the minus button as soon as possible to call Oswald, as I will need him to cross the chasm. It may seem like these bumps in the ground slow Mickey down, but jumping actually loses more time than the bumps, so I just run over them. At the end of the passage, I throw Oswald up instead of letting him jump by himself. Although this is a lot faster, it does make him jump lower, so we'll have to compensate for the lost airtime during the flight. It's a very small detail, but the jump up to Oswald is surprisingly difficult to time, because if you jump too early, you won't get enough height to make it across, but if you jump too late, you'll lose time. After passing through the first airjet, again, don't ask me where this is, because when you look down at the edge of either side of Mean Street, it just isn't there. Also, where would this be in Epic Mickey 1? I don't remember hearing about an underground anything in that game. Anyway, after passing through the first airjet, I angle myself slightly left to get just enough air out of the last airjet to make it across. These camera adjustments are my pressing C on the nunchuck to avoid the camera turning automatically. When I do make it across, Oswald is in my way. So to avoid losing time, I jump, spin, and paint burst in rapid succession to get him away from me, and closer to the locked gremlin. This is Purple Gremlin. Everyone say hi to Purple Gremlin. Although apparently unimportant enough to not be given a name, Purple Gremlin is the savior of this run, as without him, we would have to go back into the underground every single time we wanted to cross from one side of Main Street to the other. So we free him to get the balloon to take us across instead. To free the gremlin, Oswald needs to fire electricity on the panel at the top, which disables the force field and allows Mickey to free it. Unfortunately, this requires Oswald. Standing approximately here gets Oswald to come fastest for whatever reason, and then I can spin it and move toward the edge as soon as the barrier is down. This text is unfortunately not a cutscene, so I can't CFR my way through it, but it's not a lot of text, so we're good. After the text, I fall into the thinner and go to Main Street North. Falling into the thinner respawns you closer to the door, so it's much faster than walking there yourself.
We should speak with Jamface over by the Walt statue. Do be careful, Mickey. I believe this building is rather unstable.
You want to get the entrance, the other end? Ha ha! You found some scrap metal.
Look at that. If we head down into the windmill, we'll be able to brave the DEC. Do you wish to enter the DEC?
There is a surprisingly large amount happening in this clip, so let's break it down. During a 1 minute and 23 second long cutscene, Mickey is told that he needs to fix the windmill to go to Rainbow Caverns, where the projector substation is. There are two ways of getting inside, but we will be giving Jamface the scrap metal, as it's the fastest way. Mickey spawns in MSN at the bottom of this ramp to take him up to the main level. Normally runners would perform a skip called ramp skip, where you jump on this barrier to make it up. But Mickey makes this jump that should be way too high for him to normally reach. How does he do it? Well, let me introduce you to Linwall jumps. This fade-in may seem all nice and dandy, but the level actually loads a bit before it's supposed to, enabling collision while characters are still being placed. Mickey doesn't jump in the beginning. He bounces on a disappearing Oswald, but 4 frames after Mickey lands back on Oswald, he is suddenly grounded for 1 frame. What's going on here? Well, Collision in Epic Mickey 2 has many strange quirks that will be taken advantage of later in this TAS, but collision is no jankier in this game than when it's moving. When Mickey lands on Oswald, a few things happen at once. First, Mickey bounces and is sent back into the air. On the same frame, Oswald decides to move. You can see this because 3 frames later, Oswald's first frame of movement occurs. During this delay, Mickey is still considered to be acting on the collision that happened a few frames prior, which happens to be Oswald's head. Then 4 frames after that, the change in collision affects Mickey while he's in midair, which activates a grounded state for 1 frame. On this frame, Mickey can jump up to the top of the underground entrance, and from there, make it up to the main level of MSN, where I thin the boards dropping 60 scrap metal, 50 of which I need to— Oh! Hello, Oswald. Thanks for helping me pick up some of the scrap metal. Ladies and gentlemen, let me finally fully introduce you to the horror that is Oswald Manip. There are 3 main steps to Oswald Manip: deload, limbo, and activation. First, Oswald has to be far enough away from me that he'll teleport to my location. He can't be right next to me or on screen, or else the game will activate the teleport feature he has. Second step is calling Oswald at an appropriate time so that he gets stuck into a state that I like to call limbo, where he doesn't move at all and is kinda stuck in one place, until step 3, where you need to get him out of limbo and where you want him to go through camera angles, cursor placement, distance, and actions. I like to call this the activation stage. In this case, I first spin on a particular frame to not only set up the activation, but also to remove this barrier so I don't run into it. Then I do a full jump first frame to delay Oswald's activation so he doesn't immediately spawn, as I want him to spawn into the scrap metal to collect it. During the jump, I hold thinner stream until the last possible frame. All this sets up when Oswald will spawn, as Oswald rarely spawns during Oswald Minute while you're in the air. To actually get Oswald to spawn, I run toward the exact location I want and jump and spin on specific frames, but actually finding these frames took a lot of trial and error. I then turn around to get the most amount of scrap metal I can in the shortest amount of time, while Oswald picks up the rest. This is the first example of Oswald Manip, and later in the run you will see more techniques used to manipulate Oswald in more extreme situations.
TV sketches can be used to activate... Shall we enter the elevator to Oztown?
This is the first of 4 DECs we will be taking in the game. Funnily enough, there are 5 DECs total, meaning the only one we don't go through is the DEC that takes you from Fort Wasteland to the float yard if you decide to take the thinner path there. DECs are also a great way to get tickets, so I will try to get as many as I can. This DEC starts with Mickey rolling one of these energy spheres into this hole to activate the lift. During this time, I'm holding minus so that Oswald gets on the lift. Before it takes off, I manipulate a drop of 43 tickets by spinning on the correct frame, and then Oswald gets on the lift as he should. Now here's the important part, because remember Oswald is stupid, right? So sometimes he gets scared that he's going up and he just hops off. So to remedy this, I hold minus again to call him on a specific frame. But the tricky thing is that I can't be too far away or else he won't come. And if I get too close, he would just come to me and not the platform. So I found that by continuously falling off and getting back on the edge of the platform actually makes him come sooner, strangely enough. I then wait at the end of the platform and do a coyote jump, this time gaining more velocity from the platform's movement. These wheels are really annoying, both in casual gameplay and in a speedrun, because they're spinning and can add speed that you don't want. Particularly the middle one because it's spinning in the opposite direction. On this wheel, I time a full jump to land on a specific polygon on the wheel, so that a first frame jump will miraculously preserve all of my speed. I then land on a similar location on the last wheel, this time staying on the wheel so that it can spin, giving me a lot more speed. This skip here is a lot more complex than it seems because of this ball's stupid ass hitbox. You first need to move it to the end of the platform where it turns up a little. Then you need to jump on it. But not so fast, because if you try to do this, you'll start grabbing the ball. So instead of pressing A, you do a special maneuver where you hold neutral for 1 frame, then jump and keep holding right. Then an easy coyote max height double jump should get you on top.
Oh dear.
Just go and connect it on the last pipe. Then we can start draining the thinner.
Don't listen to that goof. My supercharger will get the job done with just 1 pump machine. Just bring a pump to the supercharger by the gag factory and use Oswald's electric beam to charge it. Careful though. The effect won't last long, so make sure to put the pump on its base next to the pool before the charge goes away.
There we go. You did it! Great work, Oswald. Do you want to enter the DEC to Rainbow Falls?
Oztown was deceptively one of the hardest areas to TAS. In a casual playthrough, you have the option of helping either Goofy or Prescott. Goofy wants you to collect all 3 thinner pumps and put them on the things, which will save Oztown's thinner problem. And Prescott wants you to just put 1 pump on his supercharger, which will also allow you to leave, but at the cost of absolutely destroying Oztown. So obviously that's the option that I choose. In order to do this, we need to not only get the pump, but also Oswald. Don't worry, this is the easiest manip to do. In the first version of the TAS, I bullshitted inputs until he spawned, which was not a good strategy because it took weeks. This time, I have an ace up my sleeve. So first, I spin Oswald away to set up the deload, and also because he was in my path. I then just barely make the jump up to the pump and then push it to the edge and fairy sketch it after falling a short distance onto the ledge. I won't go into sketches here because they don't really play that big of a role in this run, but just know for now that the fairy sketch makes stuff float for a short time. Falling onto this ledge was actually a tactical play here because it allows me to cover some distance while also waiting for the pump to fall and then for the fairy sketch to take effect, which allows us to push the pump over this thinner without slowing down. Now the issue comes down to optimally pushing the pump toward the supercharger while avoiding this piece of collision. First I jump over the pump for better alignment, and then spin, which pushes the pump far quickly. Before the pump gets too far away, I paint burst to add some extra velocity. I then run toward the pump and push it again, narrowly avoiding the collision. As I paint the pump and spin it again to get into the supercharger, Oswald spawns right behind me and immediately charges the pump. This Oswald manip was not done in the same way as the last manip in MSN. This is extended Oswald manip. At the start of Oztown, Oswald is deloaded and soon after forced into limbo as the distance becomes too great. A frame before Oswald is activated, I cancel the activation by releasing minus. I then continuously repress minus and release it a frame before he would respawn, essentially trapping Oswald in limbo. When I want Oswald to respawn, I simply don't release minus, and he'll respawn where I want with the right camera angle. Now I get the pump in the supercharger before the fairy sketch timer is a quarter of the way done, but in actuality the pump's floating timer is around half over. The visual timer just tells you when you can activate the sketch again. When the pump's fully charged, I immediately spin and paint burst it to get over to the thinner. A long paint stream will get into the charge pump thing right when the fairy sketch runs out. Now the paint burst also acts as a tool to deload Oswald once again. While he's deloaded, I head over to the thinner to put him in limbo since he can't spawn in thinner. I then jump over the turnstile to spawn him in and run over to the opposite side to turn it faster, since Oswald's AI makes him always go to the opposite side of wherever Mickey is on the turnstile.
This elevator will take us up to Rainbow Falls, shall we?
This is our second DEC, taken right after the first because the projectors are still broken. Right off the bat, I do a spin jump off the trampoline. You may have seen me do a 5-frame spin jump when air stalling because it allows you to gain height faster when jumping. This way, I don't bump into the wall. I then thinner burst as soon as possible to thin the rotating vinyl, and then perform a series of jumps to skip the pinball puzzle. As I'm turning around, I do another spin jump up to the horn. I then turn around mid-air and quickly do another spin jump, the animation of the spin getting cancelled by the bounce. Double jump gets me just enough height to make it up to the small platform here, and then I coyote jump up to the red ball. There are a number of ways to approach this jump, but I found that jumping higher here and landing later gives me more speed. After a short thinner stream, I spin to land sooner so I can take advantage of a boost I get by landing on this corner. I then coyote jump off this airplane, getting more speed from its downward momentum. This is not the fastest way to do this part. It's actually faster to thin the rope holding the hammer so you can go farther with the jump. Welcome to Rainbow Falls, possibly the hardest area to tack. Before I show you the TAS itself, let's go through the speedrun route. First, 3 Guardians are collected for the Slobber fight in Fort Wasteland. Then, he jumps in the invisible ink to avoid the eye here before blowing up the store to make it to the Thinner Falls, which he goes through with indelible ink. Before starting up the machine, he thins these gears and pushes the pipe, saving a bit of time to make the platform cycle. Now, let's watch the TAS up until the machine repair.
Look here. That's an inkwell, full of invisible ink. We should investigate at once. If we paint in the tune around an inkwell, it fills with invisible ink. Jumping into the invisible ink will make you invisible. Seems rather obvious when I say it out loud. The falls are an obstacle. The ink is as hard as a lobster's shell. Even thinner will slide off. Do be careful, however. The shell breaks apart as you move. If you're hit too many times, the shell will break apart. But at least it will give you time to catch your breath. Goodness, it's the projector substation. You see those falls? They power the machine. It looks like the funnels that draw power from the falls aren't operating. See if you can...
The TAS starts out getting 1 Guardian, which isn't good because we need 2 for the Slobber. I then perform what's called eye skip. You see, spins are normally used for knocking back enemies instead of a movement technique. For you to knock back an enemy, you need to touch it, so spinning grants you invulnerability for being knocked back for 15 frames, or exactly half a second. By jumping off these crystals here with enough speed, I can reach the Thinner, where a spin can carry me with just enough time to pass through. Then, I get knocked back. So, during the spin, I double jump, which gets me enough height so that instead of falling into the void, I land on this tiny piece of collision conveniently placed at the base of the Thinner Falls on the other side. I then spin again and move forward to avoid being damaged anymore by the Thinner. Now for part 2. At the peak of this geyser's height, I run forward and do a coyote jump, followed by a 5-frame spin jump, and then paint burst to accelerate descending. Once I land, I run for a few frames before repeating the same steps, only this time the paint burst is to air stall. I then set up the upcoming Oswald minute by spawning him on this platform. I then jump up to the indelible ink and turn left right before I'm about to land, so that I land on the inside corner of the well, setting up a trick I call Ink Early. I then first frame jump, which extends my hitbox just enough so that I touch the ink. This starts a timer to eject me from the ink, but as I land from the jump, the timer runs out and ejects me a few frames earlier from the well. On the other side of the falls, I call Oswald back so that he runs to the door as soon as I arrive. I then deload Oswald by spinning him, and then thin the gears while moving as little left as possible so that I don't lose any time. Looking slightly toward the left prevents Oswald from spawning on the right, so calling him back on the other side of the machine puts him near the panel. Alright, so this is my favorite part of the task because of how satisfying it was to see everything when I finished. Before I show you the task, let's go over how a speedrunner completes it. There are 3 places of concern in this room. There's the pipe, the lift, and the fan, each with its own paint or thinner endings. We're going to go for the thinner ending because the DECs are a lot faster to complete than projectors. To get a thinner ending, one must complete the thinner path in the majority of the places, meaning at least 2 out of 3. So, after watching a long cutscene, Kobe starts by pushing the pipe to the thinner path because we already thinned the gears. Then, he hops on the lift and thins the rock, giving us our second thinner path. Then he falls down and paints the clock, slowing the fan down, allowing us to spin the gear. He then runs over to the central console and allows Oswald to shock the pin. Now, let's look at the tasks.
See if you can use this device to get them running again.
Oh, hey, what you doing up there?
We could ask you the same question.
butter now. Get on over to the center and start her up. Say there, pallies, the machine is ready.
Wait for me!
This DEC leads right to the devil side of Rainbow Caverns. Would you like to visit?
Since this section is a bit hard to follow, I'm going to provide a map to show you where Mickey is. The section starts with Mickey running off camera, jumping over this sign, then jumping over the pipe to push it in place. Pete then asks a question, receives no answer, and then the screen cuts away to Mickey thinning the rock on the lift. What just happened? So off screen, I turn around on the pipe and jump onto the lift. To be honest, I'm not entirely sure why this works, but by jumping on the lift, I'm able to make the camera come over to me. Might have something to do with the distance away from the cutscene camera that makes it glitch out, but I'm honestly not sure. When the rock is thinned, I back away to paint the clock, but I ledge grab the platform. This, albeit annoying, allows me to slightly adjust the camera toward the clock. Without this ledge grab, I would be falling too fast to paint the clock, and I would have to paint it later when I land. Mickey then falls off screen, and I send a stream of paint that hits the clock. Fortunately, the clock only needs a few drops of paint to be painted in, so I didn't have to spend that much time painting. I then press C to adjust the camera toward the fan, and then Pete's dialogue continues. Pete is a very slow talker, so I pause to skip his text boxes. The camera then unfortunately pans away when I need it most, so I have to make the jump behind the fan, spin the gear, and jump back in front of the fan blind. I did all of this blind movement with trial and error because after the cutscene I was able to see where Mickey's position was. I then skip another of Pete's dialogue and wait for Oswald to activate the machine, skipping the rest of the cutscene.
Shall we go to Rainbow Caverns?
The third DEC is one of the most deceptively complex sections of the TAS. Our first hurdle is optimizing the jump from the lift to the vinyl, which was done with trial and error. I then get pushed backwards by this boot here, which, unlike the boot on the PC version, is unavoidable. I then get a boost from the wheel that I discussed in an earlier DEC, and launch this ball all the way down the xylophone and into this hole, which lowers the drawbridge. For speedrunners, this is the most annoying section of the entire run, aside from Autotopia, because sometimes the ball can just get launched all the way to the start of the DEC. I'm first going to talk about the launch from the first TAS, and then from this one. In the first TAS, I run off the platform pushing the ball, then I grab it when I land, stalling it midair. I repeat this a few more times, and the ball is over me, so a simple jump will propel it across the xylophone. For whatever reason, that didn't work the second time around, so I jump and land on the ball at the perfect angle, launching it that way. I had a lot of trouble setting up the jump, but I eventually found that spending 4 frames on this pressure plate right here gave me the perfect height to start jumping from. Now unfortunately in both TASes I was unable to avoid the blue hammer, so I spun to avoid damage. Rainbow Caverns is an interesting place because it's divided in 2 parts, the Devil Falls and the Angel Falls. Because we took the thinner route in Rainbow Falls, we took the DEC to Devil Falls. Had we taken the paint route in Rainbow Falls, we would have taken the very long projector to the Angel Falls. So why didn't we take the projector? Well, aside from the projectors being a lot longer than the DEC, the Angel side is a lot bigger than the Devil side, meaning it takes a lot longer to get across. This is even further exemplified by the sword that cuts across the Angel side, providing a shortcut to the projector. Now, this would be a fantastic way to get across, if only the sword wasn't being thinned by these sweepers as you walked across it. Additionally, the DEC spawns you in a better position in Disney Gulch than the projector. The first thing you'll see when you look down upon the devil side is this huge maze here that can be shut off by turning these levers. After passing through the maze, you need to turn this lever, which opens a passage to the DEC that takes you to Disney Gulch. Let's look at how the TAS handles the devil side.
What do you think you're doing?
The Devil and Angel Caverns, one of the first attractions built in Wasteland. The caverns themselves weren't built by Oswald, and we don't know how they were formed. They should lead us directly to Disney Gulch. Shall we visit Disney Gulch?
So, right off the bat, I spin Oswald because, for whatever reason, he spawns right in front of me, blocking my path. I then spin the crystals here as early as possible so that the heart will spawn earlier and I can pick it up without having to wait that long. To pick up a heart, you have to be in its hitbox for around 14 frames, or a little less than half a second. In this case, by spinning as early as possible, I only have to wait 4 frames. Hearts can come in 2 different forms. There is the heart that heals 1 HP, and the heart that heals 3. I need the heart that heals 3, which fortunately always appears when you have 1 HP. I then land in the intersection of the hitboxes of the crystals, much like I did in Rainbow Falls, and align myself to jump around this wall of the thinner. It may look like I left a lot of room here, but these hitboxes actually look more like this, so jumping around them was a lot more of a hassle than it appeared. Warren Spector made this jump really convenient because there's this little piece of ground that you can barely make it to. Unfortunately, the ground is really uneven, so to lose the least amount of time on the landing, I landed in the place with the lowest slope, and then ran along this seam here before doing another coyote jump and doing the same thing. On the PC version, this little area doesn't have landable collision, so you just slide off. That's fortunately not the case on the Wii version, so I run up the slope a little bit to gain some height, and then max height double jump to barely make it up. This is probably not the most optimal way to make this jump, as it may save a little bit of time to make a more direct line to land slightly more to the left, but this was the most optimal jump I found. This enemy, for whatever reason, doesn't attack you, and actually aggroes onto Oswald instead of Mickey, so I was just able to ignore him.
Should we enter the elevator to Disney Gulch?
This is probably my favorite DEC because of the amount of content it has. Unfortunately, we only get to see the smallest sliver of it due to this shortcut to the end. Each of these jumps here is on the last possible frame so that I maximize the boost from the coyote jump while not getting damaged by the thinner. Optimizing the jumps at the end here was a bit tricky, but I found that jumping to the tops of these yo-yos doesn't lose any time as landing on a slope may have. I then land on the very edge of this horn thing and double jump so that I barely make it to the edge of the final platform. While we're here, I also want to mention that if Mickey lands while he's in the middle of a jump animation, his ears will appear backwards for 1 frame.
More objects you thin. This small guardian pool is in a pink state, but the guardians are trapped. I know. Thinning those toon cacti should release the guardians. And I do believe painting in toon will do it as well. Try using a guardian on that spatter up on the rock. You can always come... Are you ready to leave?
Disney Gulch is split in two areas, the remains of the Thinner Seas and the entrance to the Mad Doctor's lab. To get from one area to the other, you have to take the train, which is powered by these battery spheres. There are a total of 3 in this area, but you only need 1 to progress. The fastest one to get is trapped underneath this water tower. To get it, you need to thin the cacti to make the base of the tower thinnable. The water tower also holds another difference between Wii and PC. On the Wii version, there is a notable ledge that holds the water, but on the PC version, it's mostly flat. So after pushing the ball a little bit to get it out of the way, I fairy sketch it and paint it to get it over the lip. This object is a lot heavier than the pump in Oztown, so spinning has almost no effect. Inside this pool here is where I collect my second and third guardians for the slobber fight in Chapter 2. Unfortunately, this produces 2 more text boxes. Had I collected 3 guardians in Rainbow Falls, these text boxes wouldn't have happened, but only 1 guardian spawned.
If it had more stairs, we could restore power to the rest of the bridge.
Yeah, I know how to do this.
Goodness gracious! Would you look at that? It appears to be another entrance to the Mad Doctor's lab. Do you wish to enter the projector to the Mad Doctor's lab?
To get to the Mad Doctor's lab, you'd normally have to cross this long bridge, but there is a secret panel that activates a shortcut right below. Weirdly enough, getting Oswald to spawn on this platform is relatively easy, but optimizing it is a lot harder than you might think. To get Oswald to spawn immediately on this platform, I first ran along the ground instead of jumping over the tracks. Then, the moment Oswald was off screen and called out, I called him to put him in limbo. I then jumped and ran along the tops of these carriages. You may have noticed that I bumped into the fence of the green carriage because of how long I needed to run on the ground. Had I jumped earlier, Oswald wouldn't have spawned immediately on the platform below. I'm not entirely sure why, but Oswald does what he wants. The final step of the manip is to thin the tune blocking the panel. Once this is thinned, Oswald spawns with the right camera angle, and I'm able to safely jump away from Oswald while he shocks the panel. Jumping up these steps was a bit of a challenge because they're positioned so close together, yet so high that I needed a double jump as quickly as possible to get up. On the last platform, I would have run into the edge that sticks out a bit. To avoid that, right before I landed, I rotated the controller around 120 degrees for a few frames, so that Mickey would slow down and clear the jump. This is our first projector we will take. Projectors have 2 sides, or lanes, that you can go through. Most of the time, one is in the foreground and the other is in the background. The default for Mickey is to take the foreground and for Oswald to take the background. However, because the old mill is a vertical projector, it's split into left and right, with Mickey taking the right and Oswald taking the left. Projectors can be spun a total of 4 times to go through their 4 settings. 4 combinations of Mickey and Oswald in the background and foreground, and 1 setting that takes you to the cinema. Because the left is faster than the right, since the projector is on that side instead of in the middle, I spin the projector once to make Mickey and Oswald go on that side.
Do you wish to enter the projector to the Mad Doctor's lab?
The old mill appears before every boss as a sort of warm-up, given its difficulty compared to the other projectors. Now, there are a few things I use to gain height quickly. The first is spin jumping, which I've discussed before. I also make considerable use of buffered acceleration before every turn. Because projectors are 2D, I can hold the direction opposite Mickey's velocity and gain momentum in that direction. So when I'll land, I'll have already built up speed and can quickly snap in the other direction. This is the technique used to bridge this gap. By combining an early spin jump with a coyote jump, I can just barely make this jump without having to wait for the cycle. A few jumps later is where I save the most amount of time in the projector. By using 5-frame jumps instead of a full jump, I'm able to land on the very edge of these platforms, barely avoiding bonking like I did in the first version of TAS. This gives me enough time to make the cycle right at the end of the projector. The Blotworks Dragon fight is one of my favorite parts of the game. Like Prescott, this fight has 3 phases. First, he attacks you with his arms by slamming them into the ground. Then he climbs out of the lava and attacks you with his tail. Then after he does that, he slams the tail into the wall, revealing a staircase that takes you up to the final phase. By this point, his tomb will be completely thinned out, so you can either paint his tomb to befriend him, or you can thin the supports holding up the ceiling. Like Rainbow Falls, this fight also follows a morality system, where it averages out what you did. So let's look at how the TAS handles this fight. You may have noticed that the TAS did absolutely none of what I just said. Normally you'd take the bridge and enter through the normal entrance, which will spawn you on the lower floor. But because we take the secret entrance, we spawn higher up. In this case, you'd just normally drop down and do the fight as normal. But since we're speedrunners, that's not really what we do. In the third phase of the fight, you can collect one of the real-world objects for a side quest. Now, conveniently, the platform that gets you to that object is located right next to the starting platform. Fortunately, the devs noticed this and placed a barrier blocking access to that platform, but as you saw, they did not do a great job. Pretty early on, a skip was found for this fight where you take Oswald and fly him over to the platform, but it was found that you could just jump to the pipe.
This can be kind of finicky sometimes, but I think I got it. Yeah, I got it. Sweet. So we skipped 2 phases of this boss, and now all we have to do is just thin these pillars.
Now, the vertical pipe on the PC version has no collision, so you can just phase right through it. But on the Wii version, it has some strange collision that prevents you from jumping too close to it. Making this jump was strange when tassing, because I remember looking at Kobe's run and seeing him jump effortlessly to the pipe, but I was unable to do that without bonking. The upper level houses the trigger to activate the third phase, so the moment I touch the upper level, the first 2 phases are skipped entirely. Going into the fight, I have 1 bar of paint, which is not great, but I can work with it. The 2 main challenges here are avoiding the spatters that spawn and attack you, and optimally aiming my cursor to get the most out of my paint streams while the boss is moving. There are 8 sections of the boss that need to be painted in, 4 on the face and 4 on the torso. I start the fight by aiming in between the 2 segments on the right side of his face while I move to the right. Once I get just enough paint in on the first 2 segments, I begin work on the right side of his torso. The torso segments require a lot less paint than the face segments, so only 36 frames of paint is required compared to around 80 for the face. I am careful to then get the right side of the face before he does his upward attack. During this attack, meteors fall with a chance to get you paint, thinner, or health. When enough of my paint has returned, I paint the remaining 20 frames left of the torso before I break the gear to get more paint and befriend the spatter inside, finishing Chapter 1. Chapter 1 of this TAS is a huge improvement over the first version of the TAS, but there still is some room to save time. Shortly after this TAS was published, Kobe found a Wii viable version of Telescope Skip using a launch from the broom. In DBC, it might be faster to finish thinning the pipe after the cutscene ends, and in MSN, going to the right instead of the left after ramp skip saves a second or so. In the second DBC, it's faster to thin the rope holding up the hammer instead of going around it. In Rainbow Falls, I could have gotten better luck and gotten 3 Guardians instead of 1, skipping the 2 text boxes in the gulch. I might have also been able to avoid skipping one of Pete's text boxes at the end to save around 3 seconds. It also might be faster to avoid getting hit by this hammer. I also might be able to use a Guardian to hit the spatter on the rock, getting the ball a lot faster. I did do a lot of testing in the TAS V1, but I was unable to make it happen. And in the Mad Doctor's lab, I could have made this jump a bit better and used thinner to get up to the platform, saving my paint for the dragon. Altogether, this accounts for around 15 seconds of theoretical time save, not including telescope skip and the alternate gulch route.